Hi everyone, it's Natalie here, and we're going to start the third and final septenary of the Siddhartha Tarot. So hold on to your meditation cushions, because here we go. So I thought I would start this septenary by just getting all three of these in on the same video, and I'll tell you why. There's a definite complete journey that we have, I think most people would agree with this really, that starts with the devil and ends with the star, right, via the tower. So that said, I think we will go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here, so we can see everybody a little more clearly. Hopefully I'll be able to find all of my props and things, and off we go. So we'll put those two to the side for the moment, and we'll focus in here on Kurukula. So the devil in this deck is represented by Kurukula. And you may be asking, but Natalie, she looks so nice. How could she, I mean, she's a little fierce, but like how exactly would a figure like this really represent the devil, right? She's really not so horrible looking. Except of course we see this all the time. She's stomping on a human body, what is obviously a human body there. So let's just unpack this a little bit. All right, so here's what it says. Here's what our friend, the author of this deck, whose name for some reason is escaping me, Bruno Letitzia, says in the decks, or in the book. The book says, the Dakini, diva of enlightened magic, a seductive enchantress who transforms seduction into a mystical expression of wisdom. So then we have our keywords: passion, seduction, great creativity, possession, obsession with creation, occult power of the unconscious, material detachment, and taste for the forbidden. Okay, so let's break this down just a little bit, right? There's a lot here. So when we're looking at Kurukula, which is just a really cool name, can I just say, like, really cool. And it's interesting, I really didn't have I don't have any personal practices that are related directly to Kurukula. I don't have any, just thinking, I don't think I have anything. No, I don't have any official practices, I should say, that directly relate to her. That said, the number of times over the last several months that this card has come up as the card of the day, or it's come up in a daily spread, has been tremendous, a large number. And so before I even knew, before I was even here doing this, long before, I was already investigating, okay, who is Kurukula, and how do I even think of her, relate to her, etc. And I will say, given the kinds of challenges that I've been through over the last year, she has become, I'm pleased to say, like a formidable ally in my journey. So I actually did end up learning a lot about her, and learning to work with her. I went and got some incense that is related to her and so forth. So why is she then, if she's so great, why is she on the devil card, right? Well, you'll have noticed, right, that some of the difficult cards already have this unusual quality to them. Okay, so the unusual quality is that despite them being a difficult card, there's something in the card that gives us a sense of hope, or what am I wanting to say? Not so much hope, a sense of confidence, of being able to manage or handle or cope or deal with whatever it is that's coming up, right? And this is no different. So, and I think it's especially exemplified in this deck through this particular card. There's a viewer of this series, and I really should have checked with what their name is. It escapes me at this moment. A lot of things have been like that lately, which is, I guess, not uncommon when you've been through a lot of, I'm told it's not uncommon when you go through a great deal of stress over a prolonged period, that like short-term memory moments can happen. And I'm not too worried about it. But at any rate, this person pointed out a wonderful thing about the deck in general, but specifically referring to this card, which is that, you know, what Bruno Letitzia offers us in this deck is not just like, hey, this is the underlying issue going on here, but in addition to that says, okay, this is the underlying issue, and here is the way to heal it. So he offers both the wound and it's the ability to resolve it, the wound and the medicine to treat it, right? Which is the point of the Buddha. And it's the point of Buddhist wisdom, Buddhist tradition. The Buddha is, and the Buddha's wisdom are the medicine for all forms of suffering, right? So it's a very, very cleverly thought out deck from that perspective. Yeah. So that said, part of the reason why we're here studying it, because it's just so brilliant. So what do we need to know about Kurukula? What are we looking at? So she is from the Padma, she's a Padma deity. Okay, so she's a Dakini, she's a Padma deity. For those who don't remember this, I thought this was a good way to illustrate it. It's red, the Padma family's red, and it's a lotus. The lotus is the symbol. I got this at IKEA. And of course it's from IKEA. It was very inexpensive, but I use it, of course. I have 2 of them and I use them in my practice, because they're perfect. Great magical object. Just finding, you know, I think all witches do this, right? Everybody does this. So she is from that family. She's a Padma deity. The Padma family is a great representation for the devil card as well. It is very much about seduction, magnetizing, passions, you know, trying to magnetize and draw in something, right? So it's craving, it's grasping, it's you know, these are the unenlightened form of Padma would be grasping, craving, passions that overwhelm us, right? Think about crimes of passion, right? Those would all absolutely fall under the devil's purview, right? In terms of the traditional devil card, or just Western ideas of what is the devil anyway, right? That would qualify. Additionally, you know, the same things that lead us into all of that hold the wisdom behind them. And that's going to become very relevant here when we get to the star. So the devil is showing us where we cling, where we grasp, where the directions, the unhelpful directions our passions lead us towards, right? That is Kurukula's job, is to show us these are the things that you suck at. These are the things that are causing you suffering, right? And simultaneously, what she does is magnetize, right? So that same magnetizing force that's inherent in the Padma family can be used like all magic, right? Positively or negatively, right? In its positive iteration, it becomes being magnetized towards things that are helpful, right? So she is also magnetizing us into our practice. She's seducing us towards being more mindful, towards engaging in practice, engaging in moral behavior, in questioning our thoughts, questioning why we do things, and ultimately, of course, in helping us stomp out aspects of the ego, or recognize at least aspects of the ego that are unhelpful to us and bringing them under our own control, right? Sorry about dirty fingers and fingernails. I have been doing a lot of work with plants because it's that time of year. They all have to come inside or be repotted. So anyway, yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. So, you know, she looks all terrifying and fierce. She has her wisdom flame. She's bright red. She's naked. She's wearing a lion's skin. She's stomping on a human body. She's carrying weapons, but look at what they're made of. It's flowers, right? So she's traditionally shown holding, she's always shown holding a bow and arrow with 4 arms and 2 legs. And it's, you know, she is a gentle but fierce, loving deity. She's going to seduce us in, and she's going to stop us from harming ourselves any further, right? So we want Kurukula around because she's going to draw us in. She's going to stop us from doing things, taking actions that are a result of suffering, right? Like, I'm going to do this really awful revenge, you know, I'm going to have revenge on somebody because, you know, and even in a small way, because they deserve it, right? She's going to come in and shoot an arrow, get your attention with it, right? With the thorns on that rose, and say, just stop. No, come here. Look, I'm really gorgeous and beautiful. Come towards this. Come towards this. And but using our own tendencies that we might have, let's say, I mean, so many things are created by men in the world, right? So, of course, as a woman, as a mostly, I would say, heterosexual woman, or living as a heterosexual woman, I would say, I still find that very seductive, right? It's very seductive. A beautiful woman tends to draw us in regardless, right? Because, you know, the effect of the mother, of the feminine, is very powerful, right? For all of us. It's why we're also so terrified of it. Is why patriarchy wants to keep it in its place, because it's so scary. It's so powerful. So she's going to lure us in with and seduce us with the same things that might lead us astray in order to help us overcome them. Right? So she's using the quality of magnetizing, of seduction, to draw us away from what's harmful, but has to get our attention first, right? But she doesn't need anything that's terrifying in terms of weaponry, because, you know, she's so seductive. That's it. So, you know, the tendencies we have to be greedy, to hang on to money, to do all of the things like that that are unhelpful, Kurukula is there to say, wait a minute, instead of magnetizing that, why don't you magnetize this? You've got the ability to magnetize great power and intelligence and kindness and compassion. Let's do that instead, right? Be it remembered, the Padma family, the intelligence, or rather we know what the unenlightened forms are. You know, the unenlightened is grasping, clinging, and magnetizing, drawing in, etc. Basically, we could say Hollywood, right, is operates with that. So does capitalism and so forth. The enlightened form would be discriminating awareness, wisdom. So the ability to look at something and discern between good, bad, helpful, unhelpful, better, less better, slightly worse, etc., and act with wisdom while looking at it, or magnetizing it, or drawing it in. How do we do that? We do it through stillness, right? So the Buddha and I should have grabbed a picture or an image. I wonder if I have one somewhere. I don't, to hand. I don't think I do. I'm just looking around my desk, which is a total cluster of decks and books and all sorts. I don't have anything here, but you know, Amitabha Buddha, who's like a big, giant red Buddha. It's the Buddha that's always sitting like with his hands like this in his lap, or frequently he'll be sitting holding something in his hands like a bull or a lotus or something like that. Those are Amitabha Buddha, okay? And he is the Buddha of meditation, right? The Dhyana Mudra or the Dhyana Mudra, etc., okay? And that's his job. So, yeah. So that's Kurukula. So she is going to help you see the things that are enslaving you to your ego and to doing things that are unhelpful or that lead you down a path of suffering. And she's going to use her weaponry, like her noose of flowers, her hatchet of flowers, her bow and arrow of flowers, to get your attention and seduce you in a different direction, right? Towards something more helpful. So that is Kurukula, the devil. Now, we move on to everyone's favorite card in the entire deck, next to death, which is the Tower. So the Tower is a fascinating card in this deck. This looks terrifying, and it kind of is, but it's not. Remember, most of the time when we see terrifying deities in Tibetan Buddhism, they're not there to scare us. They're not there to make us think like, oh no, this is really a religion made of devils and evil things. Far from it, although that used to be the way I viewed it. So I'm just throwing that out there. It's also kind of what held me at bay for a long time. I had a lot of Western religious conditioning to overcome before I could really engage with it, right? I had to be a Buddhist for I don't know what, almost 10 years before I could really go this direction. But essentially what we have with the Tower in this particular deck, right, is a deity or a Haruka, so a wrathful or you know, frightening looking figure that is intended to be protective and helpful, okay? And what we could say in summary is that this particular deity is here to help you know, let's see, I gotta back up. When we go through a Tower moment, right, we go through a really hideous moment where everything is torn down, we feel upended. I know I've got Tower cards hanging around here somewhere, and I just feel a need to pull one out. I bet I can find one easily in the deck I'm working with at the moment. So traditionally we see, you know, an edifice that has been, here we go, an edifice that has been, you know, upended and knocked down. And there's a sense from the flames, right, that we're dealing with something that had, you know, it's knocking over the whole structure of our lives. It seems to come from outside of us, and it topples our view of the world. Everything we thought we knew is something we don't know anymore. You know, we can't make sense of it. Sometimes it's a literal disaster. Sometimes it's a metaphorical disaster, right? You know, maybe we wake up one day and say, you know, we have a Jerry, I was about to say Jerry Springer moment, but that's not the one I'm looking for. Shoot, it's a movie. It's a movie. I can't think of the movie's name. Damn you, perimenopause. What is your deal? It's basically the moment where we wake up, it may be this. Wake up, look around and say, this life is not the life I signed up for. Everything I thought I was standing for is not working. I can't stay in this job, this relationship, this house, this situation, etc. But it's not going to be just one thing. It's going to be like the whole thing, right? Or you may you may have gone through hideous amounts of suffering for a long time, only to find that you know, you have a sudden recognition that everything is being turned upside down, and you don't know which way is up anymore, right? So it could be something as literal as like a natural disaster, which sadly I think a lot of us are going to be facing. in, you know, the coming decades, in one form or other. But it could also be, you know, due to climate change, but it could also be, you know, that you found out that Bernie Madoff stole all of your life savings, right? Those moments, those tower moments, right, of which we're all familiar, they're incredibly significant because they hold within them the opportunity or the possibility of spiritual awakening, right? So that we don't just have a moment where everything gets turned over and we are in some way turned inside out. It's not just that. It's that, and within that, there is potential for there to be a profound spiritual awakening. The sad thing is, and I realized this as I went through my own tower phase, or, you know, several years in my life, where it wasn't several, it was a few, it was over a couple of years, where I realized, wow, you know, not everybody sees the opportunity within this to awaken more deeply, right? To become the better version of ourselves. Sadly, that's not always what happens. That said, that enter Lord Chemchok. Okay, so Chemchok is the deity in this card, right? That's wisdom flames all around the countless heads here. Depends on which source you consult, how many heads there are, but I think there's like 42, and they all have purposes. They all have a purpose and a meaning to them, which is ultimately around awakening. So what Bruno Letitzia writes in the book, he says, the irate manifestation or wrathful manifestation of Samantabhadra. He has 21 heads and 42 hands. So that's in this version. Yeah, again, depending on what source you consult, sometimes there are differences. It is the central figure of the Kagye Mandala and holds in its hands a good part of the Buddhist pantheon. He brings out the hidden aspects of the self. And so then the key words are liberation, opening up, sudden and painful awareness, breaking, moving, lightning strike, explosion of joy. Yeah. So it's that moment in life, where the same, hopefully, with the medicine of the card, right, with the medicine of Chemchok, the tower moment becomes that simultaneous moment of aha, right, of the lightning, of suddenly recognizing, wow, I have the ability to shift things, as well as seeing that everything is being shifted out of my control, right? I can take control of this on some level by accepting it, by choosing to understand it, by saying, okay, this, you know, by acknowledging the reality of it. And when we do that, and we acknowledge the reality, you know, when it says sudden explosion of joy, right, that has the ability to accompany that experience. Yeah. And that is also part of that awakening process, right? Is seeing that everything is toppled, but within that, there is this remarkable potential to awaken. And it's usually not an experience we can really verbalize, right? It's not an experience that's verbalizable. It's usually something that's a little beyond our capacity to lend words to. But it's profound. And, you know, in usual form, while something destructive and hideous is happening to you, are you vulnerable? Yes. Yes. It breaks you open. It breaks your heart open. It breaks your mind open, and you become a little more vulnerable. So we are offered this protection, right, of a wrathful deity who's going to say, wait, you know, I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you safe through this. Okay, so Samantabhadra, just as a reminder, we have seen, this is the wrathful form of Samantabhadra, who we had, you know, in the Hierophant and the Lovers, right? Samantabhadra is a key figure when we get to talking about the Bardo and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Are we getting in that in frame here? Maybe I have to expand outward a little. Whoops, that's the wrong direction. There we go. Yeah, the Tibetan, I don't think we can even see the whole thing. The Tibetan Book of the Dead here, right? Which there are many versions of. They're all a little different, depending on whose commentary it is. This one's Bob Thurman. That would be Uma's dad, actually. Wonderful, wonderful version. Then we have one that's very popular on the mass market, right? The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, Sogyal Rinpoche. And then, of course, Chogyam Trungpa's version, which has a wonderful Samantabhadra on it and is actually not a very thick one. So, I don't know. I think it's interesting to have multiple copies to look at, and Tibetans are very, you know, this is, in the West, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying is really what brought Tibetan Buddhism into the fore. And the Tower card and Chimchak are very instrumental in those practices, okay? Well, the Tower card is not, but Chimchak is. Because what could be a bigger tower moment than actual physical death, right? That would be pretty terrifying. So to go back to Vajrasattva, which we had before, Chimchak would be living up here in Vajrasattva's head. So we have the peaceful deities in the heart, of which Samantabhadra is at the center. Okay, we have the Rigdzin, or the wisdom beings, in the throat, and then we have the wrathful deities at the head. And Chimchak would be right at the center of that, with all of his heads. But of course, we can't see it all in great detail because it's so small. So yeah, he's one of the deities that we picture when we're doing a Jitro, right? Ji meaning peaceful, and Tro, like trauma, meaning wrathful. So yeah, there we go. And now you've learned a little bit more about Tibetan Buddhism, whether you wanted to or not. Then we go on to our final one in this particular iteration here. We have the star. And the star has a very interesting depiction here of Machi Glabdron. So some of you watching know this already. The teacher that I follow at Tara Mandala, Lama Tsultrim Allione, was recognized a few years ago, several, I think, actually years ago now, twice in two different locations as an emanation of Machi Glabdron. So Machi is regarded as a Buddha in her own right. She was an 11th century. I want to say she was in the 1100s. I should know her dates. I really should know her dates. I want to say I do know her dates, but I may not. Anyway, she lived in the 1100s. In Tibet. She was a teacher, and she overcame, you know, she's known for overcoming demons in various forms. Okay, she is also the teacher who introduced and created the Chud practice. It's virtually entirely credited to her at this point. Yeah, so that she is the embodiment of basically my entire practice as a Buddhist at this point. I do Feeding Your Demons practice, which Lama Tsultrim kind of invented, I guess, for lack of a better term, to make it more accessible to Westerners. And yeah, and Chud. So she's got her Chud Damaru in her right hand and her bell in her left hand. And there she is celebrating overcoming demons. She's never really depicted quite like this. Usually she's depicted like a Dakini with one leg up, you know, the left leg down, the right leg up in the dancing posture, but this is different. All Dakinis usually have a six-sided star as part of their mandala mansion, so we have that represented here. Yeah. So there we have that. Let's see what Bruno Letitzia says in the book. It says the star Machi Glabdron She who created the practice of chud, which symbolizes victory over one's demons. It incites one to act and find one's place in the world. So, yeah, we have that moment. We have the tower moment, right? We have this happen. And what happens after that? We have to rebuild, right? And through becoming more enlightened, we continue to overcome the demons that arose from this experience. And we find, our place in the world. We keep overcoming those demons over and over and over again, right? Without ceasing, gently and tenderly surrounding oneself with our demons. So the key words here are acting in reality, altruism, purification of the world, spiritual protection, fortune, harmony with nature, truthfulness, and awareness. Yeah, it's beautiful. So something that's often said about Machig and about the practice of chud is that we are intending to go beyond, beyond hope, right? We're supposed to transcend just, hopes and fears, because hopes are what we have in place of fears, right? We go, okay, I'm afraid of this, so I'm going to hope for this. And then we pin everything on that as a way of avoiding our fears, okay? And what Machig's teachings say is like, don't do that. That's not going to help you in the long run. It will just make you suffer, because we can't control those things, right? We can't. What we can control is the ability to look at what's difficult. So we look at the so-called, air quotes here, demons, right? Which are really never outside of ourselves, even when they are. Okay, even when they are a literal demon, what is it inside of us that is ultimately going to magnetize it, right? So Kurukula is here to help draw us towards the practices that help us identify what it is in the ego that creates that issue. And then as we look at the star, Machig's practice is to say, okay, now that you know what that is, don't turn away from it. Don't turn away from it. Look at it, accept what it is, live with that reality. And in doing so, the key to liberation lies within it. Yeah. There's a supplication practice that I'm about halfway through my requirements of that practice. So you have to get 108 hours of it, and I'm probably about 50 something in. But one of the lines in the practice that you contemplate is about how things can be pacified in their ground by turning the mind towards it. So rather than turning the mind away and toward a hope as a way to remedy a fear, you may recognize the hope is there in response to the fear, and you hold both of them gently and delicately and at a slight distance, right? And through that wisdom, and by simply allowing it to be there and being willing to sit with what's happening, amazingly, it really is, as the line goes, it is pacified in its ground. It is calmed simply by turning the mind, the wisdom of the mind toward it, which really doesn't require anything other than just the willingness to look and to sit with it instead of having a reaction to it, which sounds not so hard, or sounds even easy, but anyone who's tried that, tell someone who's having a panic attack to calm down, right? Or to stop what they're doing and turn towards the panic attack. And if you've ever been there, and yet we have tools that teach us how to do that. We have the medicine that allows us to do those things, right? Okay. So there we go. There we have this trio of fabulousness We have the Devil, which leads to the Tower, which leads to the Star. And of course, they can all happen in isolation, as many things do. But when we look at the journey as a whole, we can see, you know, what that journey looks like and how it structures itself. Okay, and the medicine that lies within it. So there we go. All right, friends, that'll be it for this week. And next week we will pick up again with the Moon and the Sun. So we'll see you then. Take care. Bye.